First of all, a reminder that this is a rating summary, not a review of the movie. For reviews, I recommend heading over to visit Dan at Movie Talk with Dan Jensen. So onto the rating summary of The Magnificent Seven. This film has been rated for violence, and understandably, it's a very violent film, particularly at the end. The end erupts in this kind of chaotic, very violent and over the top, but very well staged scene where quite a lot of people are shot with either arrows or bullets. People are stabbed. Some of them are stabbed repeatedly. There's one guy who, once he gets going, he finds it very difficult to stop. People are kind of stabbed in the back where tomahawks are thrown at them. You see people being near choked to death, lassoed, all kinds of stuff, knocked off horses, thrown against walls, thrown through glass windows, really classic Western stuff, which is wonderful and quite enjoyable and entertaining to see on screen. So with the violence, of course, there's a really high body count in this film. There's a couple of scenes where, in fact, you just see these, streets full of dead bodies on the ground. It's not particularly bloody, though, I have to say, even though you do see quite a few corpses. And there's a few intimate deaths. I mean, there's a couple of scenes where husbands are killed in front of their wives, or a brother is killed in front of his sibling and stuff like that. So there's some personal deaths, and some of our main characters don't survive this film either. So there's people that you come quite sort of familiar with and grow to love through the film, and they don't all survive, sadly. So, but having said that, it isn't particularly bloody. So there's a few scenes of gore. One of them, probably the most gory scene, actually involves an animal. So this animal, which is already dead, you see it carved, sliced down the middle, and its bloody organ, it looks like a liver, is removed and then shared between two men. So they start eating this raw bloody liver. The other kind of gory scene is where an ear, a man's ear is shot off, and when he's lying on the ground, you see the bits of flesh and ear laying next to him on the ground. I mean, not to say that there isn't blood in the film. You do see quite a few bloody heads and quite a few bloody hands, actually, as well. Some bloody bullet wounds or injury wounds, and just elsewhere on the body. But I'd say it isn't a particularly bloody or gory film. It's just the violence, which has been flagged by the classification boards. So, on to other things. Sex and nudity. There's no concerns for sex in the film, which is not surprising because there isn't any. Actually, having said that, it has been flagged in a few of the board ratings around the world. And I think the reason for that is, even though there isn't any sex in the film, there's quite a few scenes where there's, whores, prostitutes in the background. Now, I mean, these are kind of like 1890s sort of prostitutes, which wear more clothes than most of us do nowadays, just going for a walk around town. So they're not particularly saucy or anything like that, and certainly nothing lewd happens. There's a few conversations where there's some kind of sexual banter happens between men joking about women. So, but they're the only kind of sexual references. There isn't any sex scenes in the film. So nudity, again, hasn't been flagged at all because, once again, there isn't any. There's a little bit of cleavage, and you see some shirtless men in a few scenes, but again, definitely nothing erotic or suggestive anywhere in the film. On to alcohol and drugs. No drugs anywhere. There is a little bit of alcohol. Again, it's nothing too heavy, so there's quite a few scenes are set in a bar and people are drinking ale and spirits. There's a little bit of intoxication, some comic intoxication, drunken behaviour, which is quite funny, but that's really about it. Nothing too heavy there. And on to the swearing. So the swearing, again, there actually isn't a whole lot. There's a few S words and A words, and there's a lot of sums of bitches through the film, but that's kind of it. So on to the enjoyment of the film. Well, it's okay. It's not too bad. It certainly isn't magnificent, that's for sure. It's quite different from the original Magnificent Seven, which, again, is not surprising, and it's even further removed from Seven Samurai, which, of course, the first film was based on. So, look, it's entertaining, it's engaging, it'll keep you amused, I guess, or diverted for the 2 hours or 2 hours plus duration time. It is quite a long film, but it's kind of a weird film. It's almost as though it's been repackaged so carefully for a contemporary audience that it doesn't really honour the original source material too closely, but at the same time it goes a little bit too far in comedy. for the contemporary audience. So I know that sounds a bit confusing, but for example, there's a bit of humour in it, which is quite nice. Most of it is delivered by Chris Pratt's Faraday character, but it's so out of place with the rest of the film that it's almost as though, actually, in fact, his entire character, it's as though it belongs in a completely different film. So there's weird little tonal shifts and confusing things like that, and it's just, I don't know, I mean, it's, you know, it's kind of fun, but there's a lot of scenes in the middle where it just lags and slows down, and you kind of might be checking your watch and wondering, you know, what's the point of it all? I guess because there's such a big ensemble cast, you know, they're trying to make space for everybody in the film, and I don't know, I think in some ways it's a poorer film for it because it just gets a little bit slow in parts. So be prepared for that. The beginning and the end are the best parts, and maybe if they just chopped out the middle and squeezed those two bits together to be a better film, who knows? And there's some lovely little homages made to the score of the first film and some of the kind of shooting techniques, and I mean that by cinematography, not the gun style shooting of the first film. So some of those are quite nice. But yeah, as I said, engaging and fun, but I don't know, certainly not magnificent. If you do see the film, do let me know what you think of The Magnificent Seven. There's a more detailed breakdown of all the content on the website, which is cinemum.net.